Special guest this morning, Arizona Senator Jeff Flake, is back in the Valley on recess right now and joining us to talk about his new book, Conscience of a Conservative. And literally the first line in this, you said you regret to have to write this book because of where the Conservative Party, the state of it right now.
Right.
Do you regret at all writing this because of criticism that you're getting on it?
No, there's praise and criticism. Obviously, you're going to get that when you write a book. You know, in 1960, Barry Goldwater wrote the original Conscience of a Conservative, and this is very much an homage to Goldwater. But he thought that the party at that time had been compromised by the New Deal. And now, I think the bigger concern is populism. This notion that, you know, you can get elected by promising certain things, but can you govern? Anti-immigration, you know, against free trade, those kind of things, they make good campaign slogans, but you can't govern that way. On free trade, for example, Arizona benefits handsomely from NAFTA. The president talked about getting rid of NAFTA, ripping it up during the campaign. Gratefully, he's moved. Now they're talking about renegotiating it. They certainly need to modernize it, but we need trade deals. We've got to compete. So things like that concern me about the direction of the party, and also not just on policy, but on demeanor and comportment. A conservative is nothing if not measured and deliberate, particularly in foreign policy, and we haven't seen that, and that's dangerous to have foreign policy that is you know, led by tweets. That shouldn't be, and that's not conservative, and that's what I try to point out in the book.
Well, I can't imagine navigating politics in the arena that it is today, because the messages that we saw at the rallies, for example, with President Trump's campaign, the messages that resonate were the ones that you probably say are not possible to put into legislation and maybe come from not a place that would be inclusive to be protecting all Americans.
You bet. I mean, it's easy for a politician to point to a shuttered factory and say, that's because China took those jobs, or because we signed this free trade agreement, when it's much more complex than that. We know that. And I think the first thing for a conservative is you've got to be honest with the electorate on what government can do and what government can't do. And I think that that's the danger of populism. Populism is called populism because it's popular, but it's not a governing philosophy. And I'm afraid that we're deviating from traditional conservatism, limited government, economic freedom, free trade, and then also, like I said, on the behavior. In order to solve the big problems that we've got to solve, our debt and our deficit, health care, tax policy, we've got to sit across the aisle with our you know, colleagues across the aisle, and we can't do that if we're calling them names, or calling them clowns or losers or babies. It just doesn't work that way.
The name calling has become the norm, and you have really been among the most vocal critics of the president from within your party, because the tone has changed, and you see it trickle down. You see how it's reflected in conversations at the family dinner table and in news broadcasts. What can be done to undo this, or is this the way that politics will be and remain?
I look at more on my side, the conservative side, but it's just as pronounced on the other side. We get into these camps now, and I mentioned in the book, one story is that when Gabby Giffords was shot and she came back to the Congress a year later, I sat with her during the State of the Union address, and she couldn't quite stand up when she wanted to, when the President Obama at that time, had an applause line, and so I would help her up, and that left me a Republican standing with all of the Democrats. I started getting texts and emails saying, why are you standing? Why are you doing that? I thought, oh my goodness, our politics are really broken when you can't say something good about your opponent, or you can't you know, express human decency. And I think that we've got to change. We really do.
What's going on with health care? Why can't we get this straight? You voted against the skinny bill. McCain voted, or you voted for it. McCain voted against it. When are we going to get that right?
You know, I think we're going back to committee now. It's going to be a bipartisan issue. I knew we'd get there sooner or later with a part of the repeal. My concern, I wanted to keep the reform alive because 200,000 Arizonans woke up this morning without health care. They paid the fine because they couldn't afford a policy. We've got to change that, and that's why with the skinny repeal, didn't touch Medicaid, and that's a big issue for Arizona, but it would have addressed those who are buying on the exchange. Senator McCain and his vote, Senator McCain has been pushing for regular order forever and protecting the institution. And his vote was consistent with everything he said, and I admire him for that.
Are you open to the modifications of the Affordable Care Act? There is bipartisan support for looking at what we have and changing it instead of
things like leaving children on until they're 26. That was never going to go away, and so people were saying we're going to repeal the whole thing. That was never on the table. I mean, because some of those things, like kids on 12 to 26, are popular. But we do need to address not just the Medicaid population in Arizona and make sure that's sustainable, but people buying on the exchange. I hear every day at the gym this morning, you know, somebody will always come to the treadmill next to me and give me their horror story with Obamacare, how they had insurance and now they lost it, and we've got to address that.
You pretty confident you're going to win re-election?
You know,
this isn't helping with Trump.
You know, I always knew that I would have a tough primary and a tough general. I've had that every time. I think in Arizona, we tend to elect people who stand on principle, who are independent-minded, who aren't a rubber stamp for a Republican or a Democratic administration. And so that's what I'm doing.
And we know we're out of time, but we've heard that the White House is entertaining challengers within the party to take you on in the primary. So that's got to be
we'll let them
frustrating
worry about that.
at least.
I'll move forward with my own campaign.
All right, well, keep us posted.
Senator,
thank you so much.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Headed to Nogales to talk about some border issues with Border Patrol later today. So safe travels to you, and certainly good to see you after that horrific shooting that you witnessed and experienced firsthand. So glad that your colleagues are okay.
Thanks.
We'll take a break. We'll be right back.